Good morning and welcome to another episode of The Extra Point here on ESPN Denver 1600. As always, I'm your host, Roland Rainey, joined with Jeremy out of Indiana, Robert from New Jersey, and Justice from New York. Hey, gentlemen, there's a lot of great hot topics out there in the NFL right now, but let me jump on one because currently we are on the path to the draft. So over the last couple of weeks, and over the next coming week, we are going to hear a lot about a lot of first rounders. And right now, these are those moments where their words and their actions are going to mean a lot and determine what teams they go to and where they fit in. And recently, Trevor Lawrence makes some pretty interesting comments about what his commitment level would be at the NFL level. Of course, he's had a tremendous amount of success at the collegiate level. But on the other side of that, you've had Justin Fields, who has had a lot of scrutiny. The assessment on him is quite different. So I want to get your guys' take on a kind of a compare and contrast. When you look at both of these athletes, what do they bring to the table? And why is Fields getting somewhat of an unfair assessment compared to Lawrence?
Roland, I tell you what, that's a great question that you asked. And I tell you what, I really think Justin Fields is kind of getting a bad deal because of, the university that he played at. It's been a narrative surrounding him lately that, Ohio State quarterbacks just don't pan out in the NFL on the next level. So I think that's working against Justin Fields. But the narrative, the fact that, he's lazy, the fact that he's not dedicated, I tell you what, I've been, watching Justin Fields since, high school. He's always been a top prospect since then. And he's kind of continued to blossom into that top prospect on the next level as well. So I just don't, see, the narrative surrounding Justin Fields in regards to him being, not the quarterback that wants to go out there and compete. We saw it, firsthand in that Clemson game when he goes out there and he takes a shot and then he gets back up and he keeps going and he puts on an amazing performance. So the narrative surrounding Justin Fields, I just don't see it and I just don't get it. Maybe I'm not in the loop like other media personnel to kind of be around the program like that to kind of understand. But from the outside looking in, I just don't see it. But in regards to Trevor Lawrence, I tell you what, his comments that he made recently is very, very, very shocking to me. Because one of the reasons why is because we give Tom Brady, that GOAT status because he does go out there and play with a chip on his shoulder. He does want to go and play until he's probably 50 years old, and that motivates him to up his game. So if Trevor Lawrence is saying, hey, it's unhealthy to kind of put that pressure on yourself, and, I don't want to put that pressure on myself to win a Super Bowl or to go out there and, to be competitive like that, I do think that raises a lot of eyebrows. A lot of teams might assess that differently now, but I still think he's clear-cut number one quarterback, and he's going to get drafted number one by the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Hey, Justice, do you believe that, based on what Robert mentioned, is Fields getting unfair, unjust assessments by a lot of folks?
Yeah, I think he definitely is. I think Robert made some great points. Justin Fields has done nothing but lead his team coming day one and put in work since day one. You talk about, when he came to Georgia behind Jake Fromm, he came in, he practiced day one, he put in the effort day one, he did everything they asked of him, and he went to Ohio State to get a new opportunity, and he gets to Ohio State, and he brings the Buckeyes back into a championship picture. We talk about the Clemson game. Robert talked about the Clemson game. He takes a shot. He didn't sit out the rest of the game. He didn't do a Jay Cutler and just sit on the bike the rest of the game, stretching out.
He brought up the Jay Cutler thing.
I mean, I don't know what more Justin Fields can do to prove, that he's a gamer, that he wants to play, and that he loves to play football. The only thing I can think of is it's draft season, 2 weeks away, smokescreen season. You got the Washington Redskins, the Chicago Bears, kind of in the middle of the pack of the first round, looking to drag him down a little bit so he could fall a little bit so they can trade up for him. That could be something that's there. I saw Ryan Pace at his second pro day. he's looking out for him. I think that's likely what it is a lot of teams are trying to bring him down a little bit so he falls, and teams have, an opportunity to get him. But as far as Trevor Lawrence, this is very concerning to me. Robert, hit it on the head. You want that fire, you want that passion shown from your leader, from your quarterback. You look at the presumed GOATs like Tom Brady and even Michael Jordan in basketball. He drove himself, he pushed his teammates, he did everything he possibly could to take his team to the next level. And when I hear something like that from Trevor Lawrence, the presumed number one pick, it has me thinking, if they make the playoffs, 4 or 5 years down the road, maybe 2 or 3 years, and they're in the, they get past the divisional round, they go into the championship game. If they're down 20 at halftime, is he going to pack it in? Is he going to give it his all? Is he going to put the team on his shoulders to bring him to that Super Bowl and elevate his team? It's a question to have, and it's very concerning to hear that from Trevor Lawrence, honestly.
Well, this is where I'm going to jump in and have a completely different opinion than probably everyone here. I think this is the most overblown thing this offseason, 2 weeks away from the draft. We're talking about Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields here. Let's get this straight. One, I've never had questions about either of their competitive ability. Like Robert said, you've seen Justin Fields play big and great games, took that massive hit in their game to get to the national championship game. You're telling me this kid isn't competitive? I just don't buy it. And honestly, I think Trevor Lawrence's explanation is something you hear from a lot of athletes in this day and age, that they do have other interests and that football isn't everything. We saw Luke Kuechly walk away from the game because of injury. I just think it's a more educated answer than probably people are expecting at this point. I have no issues with either of these guys. They're going to be, top 4 draft picks in this class. I think they're going to go on to be franchise quarterbacks, and they're going to be great leaders. They're going to be great competitors. I'm not reading anything into this, really.
Well, yeah, and you make a great point. Well, actually, all of you have made great points, and I would just say I think this is kind of this weird duality of what you expect out of a potential number one pick. You're listening for those taglines. You're listening for them being a part of the party line to say, hey, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to be the first one in the workout room. I'm going to be the last one out of the film room. I'm going to be that person who will be the instantaneous leader of the organization. When you do hear someone who's had so much success as Lawrence kind of make a comment like he's done, it gives people a moment of pause. And I think to your point, Jeremy, where you say this comment probably has been blown out of maybe out of the waters a little bit, I think what is giving people is a moment of pause to say, okay, hey, is this guy who we think he really is, or is that just an educated way of saying, hey, I'm going to go into the NFL, I'm going to give it my all. If I don't pan out, okay, I don't pan out. If I do great, I do great, but I'm not going to place undue pressure on myself. I think some can actually go back and look at last season, and you look at Burrow and you look at what happened. Did he place any undue pressures on himself to try to get the Bengals somewhere? We all know that no matter what he did, the Bengals were not going to go to the Super Bowl. But was he going to put them on a path to go somewhere? And then, of course, he gets injured, and it feels like a major setback. So maybe it's an educated way of saying, hey, I'm just going to go into this thing eyes wide open. But I will agree with Louis Riddick. If this was Fields stating this on national television or in some type of social media realm, then that comment would be feeding into the assessments that people are already making about him, even after he's already proven that he's a go-getter, that he's someone that will go out and give you his all. Is it a fair assessment between the both of them where one is being over-criticized for not being a go-getter and the one who should be the go-getter makes a comment that, makes you kind of tilt your head a little bit and makes you wonder. So only time is going to tell about that one. So let's kind of jump from the draft and go right into the NFL right now, because the Browns have made a big move. They have signed Clowney, and, earlier we were talking, is he a missing piece? Is he a piece that potentially will put the Browns into serious Super Bowl contention? Now, I will have to tell the audience, I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. Robert made a comment earlier, and Justice is just waiting to pounce on this comment. So I'm going to let him rip at it. Let's start with Robert. Robert, is Clowney the answer?
This question is kind of twofold, Roland. You said, is Clowney the answer? I wouldn't go that far and say he is the missing piece to put, Cleveland Browns over the top to win a Super Bowl. But I tell you what, he actually is a significant piece that can help them get there and being a contender. Last year they played Kansas City Chiefs ridiculously hard in that playoff game, and they could have actually won that game. I think, Clowney does a lot. He hasn't, really performed to the level that we thought he was going to perform to when he got drafted. But at the end of the day, he takes pressure off of Myles Garrett on the other end from getting double teamed. So I know he hasn't been, stuffing the stat sheet with sacks, but hey, maybe he can take pressure off that defense, and maybe he can be, a driving force in that locker room. But when it comes down to the Cleveland Browns, I think it all falls on Baker Mayfield's shoulders. If Baker Mayfield can kind of, play better, similar to what he played last year, I think this team is a legit Super Bowl contender.
Before I let Justice off the leash to come after you, I'm going to go to Jeremy. Jeremy, what do you think about the Clowney signing by the Browns?
I'll agree with Robert to an extent that it's a nice addition to that defense. It will probably allow Myles Garrett to get a little more single blocked. Last year he started getting a lot of double teams when he started really becoming that heat-seeking missile after the quarterback. So, it does add someone with significant talent to the other side. But honestly, my big question is football still important to Jadeveon Clowney? Because it doesn't always seem that way at times. The past 2 years, he's held out for these massive, mega $1 million deals, and I'm not exactly sure what the 1 year deal looked like this year. But the prior 2 years, he got paid close to $37 million combined, and maybe had 6 sacks. I understand he impacts the game more than just when sacks. He's got a decent pressure number. But I really hope Cleveland didn't overpay here for a guy when honestly Cleveland's biggest thing is still stopping the run. That's one area where Cleveland just could not defend last year. They couldn't stop the run, and then with the rash of injuries in the secondary, they couldn't really cover the pass either. I don't think Jadeveon Clowney's some savior for that defense. I think he comes in, he's a nice complementary piece at this stage in his career.
Justice, the floor is yours, my friend. Let us have it. Is he the right guy?
In short, no, he's not the right guy. Look, I'm trying to be honest here. I don't want to bash him too bad on this show, but look, Jadeveon Clowney's a big name. He has probably a top 5 play ever in college football history with that sack in the bowl game, which really catapulted his draft stock. But a former guest at Merrill Hodge, he did a great evaluation of him pre-draft when he came out. He lacks, efficient technique. He's more of a athletic type of edge rusher. He uses his speed. He's not really too great with his hands. And when I see Cleveland signing Jadeveon Clowney, it just fills a roster spot to me. It just fills a position across from Myles Garrett. Look at what he did the past 2 years. He had 3 sacks in 2019, 0 sacks in last year when he held out until September looking for $20 million. He did nothing that really, gets me excited about this. He's one of the most penalized defensive players in the league with offsides penalties. He makes a lot of mental mistakes. To say he's not the missing piece, but he's going to catapult this team to a playoff contender, I just don't see it. I mean, I'm looking at a guy who was in this position last year, and Adrian Claiborne, who played opposite of Myles Garrett. He had more sacks than Jadeveon Clowney with 3.5. So what is really Jadeveon Clowney bring to the table that wasn't there last year? Maybe a little bit better against the run. He's a little bit more stout. He can help that defensive line stand up better against the run. But, like Jeremy said, they need linebacker help bad. They need to stop the run from that level first. And to say Jadeveon Clowney is going to catapult this team, I just don't see it. I think he'll be lucky to get 3 sacks on the year. I still look to Myles Garrett as the guy, to carry this defense.
So I would agree with all of you. And I think if I'm a head coach, what I'm doing with this recent signing is I'm using it to allow Garrett to freelance. I'm going to utilize that body on defense in various positions, which, may be impactful in the rush. But at the same time, because he will still demand some attention, it allows me to freelance other positions on the field, especially with Myles Garrett. So I think it's a decent signing. I don't think it's a signing that's, like, whoa, hey, we just signed like the next Lawrence Taylor. It's not that type of signing. It's basically a good roster fill. It's a solid roster fill to allow a defensive coordinator to manipulate the defense, various schemes, and in hopes that it will draw some attention. But to a previous point, I still believe the Browns getting into the playoffs starts and stops with the QB. It has to start and stop with him. Look, he did extremely well last year. Couple of hiccup games where he tried to do a little bit too much. But at the end of the day, they were right there. They were in the hunt. They had running back issues with some injuries. Hey, once they got going, they were back in the hunt. So if you got a healthy Cleveland Browns, whether you got a Clowney or not, I think you are in the hunt. All right, let's go ahead and take it another step further with NFL PA. And let's talk about this recent decision by several teams to start to articulate their desire not to participate in these volunteer workouts. As everyone may or may not know, volunteer workouts in the NFL start up on April 19th. Before that can even happen, you already had the Bears, the Browns, and the Giants talking about not participating. Just this past Tuesday, now you have the Broncos, you have the Buccaneers, you now even have the Seattle Seahawks talking about not participating in these volunteer workouts. Now, the underlying theme is because of COVID protocols. Here's my issue. You bent heaven and earth to have a 2020 season. You put all of COVID protocols in place. We had a season, we had a Super Bowl, and it worked out really well. What changed from that particular protocol framework to where now we cannot even have workouts, a typical workout? I'm a little lost on the philosophy on some of these teams. What's your guys' take?
Well, wait a minute. You mean NFL veterans don't want to work out in the off season? I mean, I think ultimately that's where this lies. You have players come out every year and skip these voluntary OTAs because they don't want to be there. Don't get me wrong. COVID is still here. We still need to respect it. It's still out there doing its havoc. But I mean, right now, I think it's a nice, convenient excuse to also say, well, these OTAs are just another area where, we can use COVID as an excuse not to get together, to practice and such. Just because this sounds like a move, just these guys already had a long year with the COVID protocols and everything, kind of one of the more trying years in the NFL. I just, my gut tells me that there's a lot of teams out there that are probably like, yeah, we don't need to take the risk. We can give these guys more rest, and ultimately the long-term goal is to be ready for August training camp, not April mini camp.
Yeah, I think Jeremy just, pretty much summed it up right there. NFL veterans, they don't want to be there. They don't need to, have voluntary workouts. A guy like Von Miller, who's been doing this for 10 years, what does he need to do that for? What do these veterans need to do that for? They can work out at home. They can, run through the playbook on a Zoom call from their houses. They don't need to be at the facility. They just need to, they want to protect their families. They want to protect themselves. I think in terms of the NFL season and voluntary workouts, that's just two different levels of, two different degrees of levels. Like the NFL season, they get paid for that. They want to be there. They want to have success with their teams. You're talking about voluntary workouts. I mean, that's basically in place just to help the younger players and the rookies and stuff like that. NFL veterans, they don't want to be there. They already have the camaraderie. They already have the team chemistry going. I just think this is a little bit overblown. I think it's just the way teams are looking to spend the off season this year after a rough 2020 of COVID.
So as we get ready to wrap up today's session, I want to wrap this one up on a high note, and that is a major congratulations to Julian Edelman for deciding to retire and call it a career. Of course, the reasoning behind him going into that direction is because of a failed physical. But you have to admit what he's been able to accomplish throughout his career has been nothing but spectacular. I mean, even looking at some of his stats, when you are right behind the legendary Jerry Rice, you're definitely up there. Now, I say up there with this caveat that I want to throw out there as we wrap up this session. Is he Hall of Fame worthy?
Not right away. I mean, we kind of talked about it. If Hines Ward isn't in the Super Bowl, in the Hall of Fame yet, I don't think Julian Edelman's going to be in the Hall of Fame yet. I mean, Ward has more. He, has more catches, more yards. Super Bowl MVP. I'm pretty sure. I think Julian Edelman got one of those, maybe in one of those Super Bowls with Brady.
He did.
But I mean, he's just a long way down the pecking order in a lot. For a lot of wide receivers that still haven't gotten in the Hall of Fame yet. I think he does.
Do you think all the Super Bowls will help that argument?
I mean, everyone judges by rings, so it'll definitely help the argument. But I just think there's a lot of other deserving guys ahead of him. I just think he might be in for a bit of a wait if he does join, the halls in Canton.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one, Jeremy. I'm going to go with a hard no. And if he does get into Canton, it's definitely going to be a long wait. And one player in particular that, comes to my mind, talking about the Hall of Fame from the receiver spot is Sterling Sharp. And Sterling Sharp was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first team All-Pro, 3-time NFL receptions leader, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. And, pretty much closer to Jerry Rice, you go down to pecking order, and Sterling Sharp was right there. And he did all of that in a shortened career before he had to retire because of an injury. So if Sterling Sharp's not in the Hall of Fame, then hell no, Julian Edelman's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. To pick up where Jeremy left off real quick, Julian Edelman Hines Ward has almost 400 more catches than Julian Edelman. He has almost 6,000 more receiving yards, almost 40 more touchdowns, and Hines Ward has 4 Pro Bowls to Julian Edelman 0. So, Julian Edelman to transition from a quarterback to a wide receiver, that's phenomenal. To step in for Wes Welker when he left, he did a phenomenal job, and what he accomplished with New England is nothing short of spectacular. But Just like Robert and Jeremy said, there are a lot of guys that deserve to be there, and I just don't think Julian Edelman does.
You know, you all make your arguments about this one. I think I'm on the notion that the 3 Super Bowls will help make the argument. Yes, it will not be soon. He definitely won't be getting in the next 5, 6, 7 years. But well down the list, his name will surface, and then, you know, we will look back on this moment and go, yeah, he's that guy that was with the Patriots who helped them in very key moments, catapulted them to 3 Super Bowls. I think that's what's going to end up happening here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again here on the Extra Point on ESPN Denver 1600. And definitely join us next week as we will have our mock draft as we continue on the path to the NFL draft. Everyone, have a safe and great weekend.